peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Nine. Please be seated. All right. This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Just before we do the roll call this afternoon, I want to claim privilege as the Speaker to welcome particularly to our Parliament this evening two young ladies who I have had the privilege of meeting, Tishwana Mullings and Sheru Melika Stevens. They are both Jamaicans, and very importantly, they hail from St. Thomas. And St. Thomas is very rural, and I'm very partial to our rural constituencies because sometimes we get forgotten. But what is interesting about the two young ladies is that they were born there, they grew up there, and they are still living, working, and earning well in St. Thomas. They are both promising young Jamaicans. They seem very ready to serve their country, and they both have achieved so much. They are both from humble beginnings, and they have climbed the ladder of success. In fact, one of the ladies did a stint in the UK, and because she did so well at the project that she was given, she is now able to do a consultancy work right here in St. Thomas, living in St. Thomas, earning in St. Thomas, and her consultancy work is from the UK. And I know they are, the UK, they are presently organizing a leadership academy in the UK for Jamaica, young people generally, particularly for, and there are a lot of Jamaicans I gather involved, and they're asking them to head a branch of that academy, leadership academy right here in Jamaica. So I want to welcome them particularly because what it does say to us, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what the humble beginnings are, it just matters whether you want to achieve success, whether you're motivated to do well, and they are right back here, not just in Jamaica, but right in St. Thomas where their roots are, serving in St. Thomas and serving the larger country, Jamaica. And so we welcome you and we commend them and commend what they have done to the other young people in this country. There are opportunities, we just need to find them, grasp, and excel. So, call of the roll.
Mr. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mrs. Holness, Mr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malaufort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mr. Lawrence,
statements by ministers, announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following appropriation accounts. For head 72,000, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the years 2016 to 2017 and 2017 to 2018. Head 7200B for Ministry of Local Government and Community Development for the year 2017-2018. Head 2833, Office of the Parliamentary Council for the year 2016-2017. Head 30,000, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade for the years 2017-2018 and 2018-2019. And Head 28,000A, Ministry of Justice for the year 2017-2018.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business.
Madam Speaker, for public business today will be the continuation of the debate on the appropriations bill, and the Speaker will be the Leader of the Opposition and Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Southern, Mr. Mark Golding. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank God for the mercy and grace He has bestowed on our nation and for keeping us safe through a tough year. in representational politics, we cannot do it alone. We rely on the support and love of many to get us through and achieve our goals. To my beloved parents who guided me in this life, to my dear wife, Sandra, and our children, including my eldest daughter, Tasmin, and our extended family, I am grateful for your care and for your love. To my colleagues on this side, I thank you for the support and your steadfast commitment to the people of Jamaica. To my colleagues on the other side, although we do disagree on many things, I enjoy our debates and hope that we will continue to have a vibrant but respectful Parliament. To the great team at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, to our leadership in the party and our workers, I appreciate your hard work and dedication to our country. To my beloved constituents of South St. Andrew, you are the wind beneath my wings. I thank outgoing councillors Marcia Anita and Neville Wright for their years of tremendous service at the KSMC and in their divisions. And I thank our councillor candidates, Sarah Marshall and Louise Newland, for their energy and commitment to the people. To the Honourable Speaker and to Madam Clerk and your team, I extend sincere gratitude for your work in our Parliament. To all public servants, thank you for your dedicated service to the people of Jamaica. It has been a tough 2 years as we have dealt with the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen much suffering and, unfortunately, many deaths. We mourn the loss of each person who died from COVID and other causes over the last year. To those who lost loved ones, I extend my deepest sympathies. We continue to pray for you and for the souls of the departed. Madam Speaker, we cannot speak about COVID-19 without acknowledging our frontline workers, our doctors, our nurses, our porters, our ancillary medical workers, police officers and soldiers, and many more. In the early days, when we knew very little about this disease and the fear was turned up to maximum levels, they put their lives on the line in service to the health and well-being of our fellow citizens. The good book tells us that greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. I know I speak for everyone in this House when I say to you, we owe you a debt of gratitude. You are true patriots and heroes. We also have to acknowledge the people of Jamaica who played such a vital role in the fight. You altered your habits, deferred your plans, changed work schedules, but above all, you cared for each other. May God bless us all. Madam Speaker, when the people of Jamaica tuned in to watch the budget presentation last week, Tuesday, they were anxious to hear solutions, the plans and programs to take us out of the unprecedented crisis we are now facing. What they got was pure theatre. Parliament became a pantomime. That's right. If the people wanted drama, they could go to the Little Theatre or Centre Stage. But they were here in Parliament. The people want real answers to the problems facing them. The Minister of Finance says we're doing well. That is a fantasy. Who are the we of which he is speaking? Not the people in my constituency, not the people in East Rural St. Andrew or the people in Southeast St. Elizabeth. The well-connected and the fortunate are making money and living well. Many Jamaicans are living hand to mouth. They can't pay the bills. They are feeling the burdens of an economy pressured by 2 years of COVID-19 and now the Russia-Ukraine war. That is their reality. Madam Speaker, there is no balance in our society. We have a deeply unequal society, still divided into the haves and have-nots. The budget presented by the government will perpetuate and indeed worsen that inequality. The pandemic has severely impacted the world economy, and Jamaica was not spared. Having suffered a decline in real GDP of over 10% in 2020, we have not yet fully recovered the lost ground. The main economic legacy of the pandemic has been a spike in inflation. This has been caused by various factors, including increased world demand for goods versus services, supply chain disruptions affecting world trade, and geopolitical tensions affecting world commodity prices, including oil and gas, but also many other commodities. The reality is that Jamaica is now facing a major onslaught from the effects of the war in Ukraine and the sanctions imposed on Russia. Russia is a major exporter of oil and gas, and the price of oil has rocketed to over $100 a barrel. JPS, the Jamaica Public Service Company, has already warned of higher electricity costs. Indeed, Jamaica Public Service has called for a national response and is suggesting that the government suspends the taxes on fuel and the GCT on electricity sales to give paying customers some relief during this period. Motorists, taxi drivers, and other transport operators are already seeing massive increases in the cost of gas at the pump. Last Thursday, our shadow spokesperson for finance, MP Julian Robinson, in an excellent and revealing presentation, showed that the ex-refinery price of gas has increased by some 60% in the 12 months through to February 2022. He also showed the massive hikes in basic food prices over the last 12 months, graphically using charts. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia will make things even worse for Jamaicans. Russia and Ukraine are major producers of grains, and the prices of wheat, corn, and other grains are already flying through the roof, and so many other products rely on those basics, including all baked products. Ukraine and Russia are also major suppliers of agricultural fertilizers and chemicals to the entire world. This means that food production around the world will be seriously affected. Sadly, the high inflation that consumers have endured over the past year is only going to get worse. Jamaicans will face higher prices for basic food items, for electricity, for water, because of the high electricity content in the production of water, and of course, transportation. This tidal wave of higher prices will flow through to other items as well. Madam Speaker, mothers will struggle to feed their children. More children will face hunger and malnutrition. Even those who are working will not be able to make ends meet. For the working poor, their meager salaries will not stretch far enough to cover the price increases. So very dark days are ahead for our people, Madam Speaker. The country is indeed on the brink of a deep crisis, but this budget that has been tabled by the government has very few real solutions to this crisis. It is clear that the budget was put together without a strategic response to protect Jamaicans from the economic fallout of the war in Ukraine. it reminds me of the budget of March 2020, 2 years ago, which did not account for the impact of COVID and had to be substantially overhauled by a supplementary budget about 2 months later. While this budget is based on a fantasy, the Jamaican people live in reality. They have to face a crisis head-on as they try to feed their families and pay their bills. At this time, reality demands that the government cushion the crisis and gives our people some ease from the heavy burdens. There is nothing in this budget that will give protection to the people who need it most. The government has not protected the people from what they will be facing. The government has no meaningful provisions to protect them from the onslaught of higher prices that are coming. We demand that more be done to ease the burdens on the Jamaican people. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance is more worried about appeasing the credit rating agencies and the capital markets than providing relief for the suffering people of Jamaica. The Jamaican people must be our priority. Prime Minister, please make the people your priority and cushion the crisis. We can always recover lost ground in our effort to lower debt when the crisis has passed. Last week, Tuesday, the minister beat his chest and colleagues on that side beat their desks as he announced that there will be no new taxes. I say to the people of Jamaica, do not be fooled by the hype. The government plans to collect $99 billion more in taxes this coming fiscal year than the year just ending. 99 billion more taxes from the people. Imagine, this is happening in a year when many have not recovered from the COVID recession and many more are facing hunger and sufferation from the effects of the war in Ukraine. $99 billion more in taxes, Madam Speaker. This is unconscionable in a time like this. We believe, Madam Speaker, that the government must rearrange the budget and find a way to give some of this $99 billion back to the people. Help the people to survive this world crisis that is overcoming us. The minister says he plans to use $2 billion to reduce the impact on some transport operators. He is yet to tell us how this will work. It was a promise that was clearly made up on the fly with no details. He's also promising a mere $750 million for care packages in the coming year. Of the $99 billion of additional taxes, all he is giving back in this crisis is $2.75 billion. At a time like this, when sufferation is on the land and the people are close to the brink, that $2.75 billion is a mere 0.1% of GDP, 0.1% of the country's gross domestic product. It is a drop in the bucket, and it is not enough to meet the needs of our people, as its impact will be minuscule. Madam Speaker, more children will suffer. They will go to bed hungry with just a little sugar and water on their lips. The elderly will suffer too. Many of them have very limited funds and have already had to cut back significantly. Many are eating just one meal a day, if that. Even the fit and the strong are suffering, Madam Speaker. You know, electricity and water affect every aspect of our life, every aspect of the life of our people. With those prices going up, the people are facing lick after lick after lick. Cushion the lick, Prime Minister. cushion the crisis, I say. Last week, the Minister of Finance tried a thing with a tune from Anthony Red Rose, but he got the lyrics wrong. Well, Minister, you're not here, but I'm going to send it right back at you. Can't say me never did a warn you. Yes. It is you who need the warning, Minister Clark, not me. Yes. Can't say me never did a warn you. Right. You control the purse strings. Don't hold them so tight at a time when the people are suffering and the society is on the brink. You are not addressing this crisis. You have no plan to protect the Jamaican people. I can't say we never did a warn you. Yes. And the government, if you continue to behave in this way, you will be riding for a fall. Yes. You must hear the cries of the people. They are hurting. They are afraid. Yes. People are increasingly upset and angry. Yes. Rain a fall, but the dirty tough. Pot a cook, but the youth not enough. A hungry man is an angry man. Act now, Prime Minister. Push on the crisis. Recast the budget. Address the cries of the people. We on this side are recommending the following benefits that need to be substantially increased in the coming fiscal year. Path benefits, poor relief, the amount spent on social pensions for those who are not receiving NIS or public sector pensions. Inflation, especially the cost of basic food items, is taking away their ability to survive. These are our most vulnerable Jamaicans. They need and they deserve the protection of the government at this time of raging inflation, and they're not getting it. Madam Speaker, I realize that some of these absolutely essential measures to give our people a break will come at a fiscal cost. The government ran a fiscal surplus of 0.3% of GDP this fiscal year that's ending now, and is budgeting to do the same thing in the coming fiscal year. The plan is to reduce the public debt as rapidly as possible to 60% of GDP by March 2028. Madam Speaker, it was the PNP administration of Portia Simpson Miller, the most honourable, that began the process of reducing the debt. In fact, our administration did the heavy lifting to get the debt down. We are fully committed to achieving that target of 60% of GDP. We are fully committed to fiscal prudence, and our track record proves it. The last PNP administration reduced public debt from 147% of GDP to 115% of GDP in just 4 years. We strengthened the fiscal responsibility framework with laws that make the budget and the whole fiscal program of the government much more transparent. Perhaps most importantly, Madam Speaker, we passed legislation and implemented administrative changes to overhaul the country's tax collection system. The JLP government has reaped the fruits of those transformational reforms since 2016. Tax revenues have increased rapidly over this period, outstripping inflation and nominal GDP growth, and without the need for any net new taxes in the period. Dr. Peter Phillips, as Finance Minister, was Gleaner Man of the Year in 2015 for these monumental achievements. I am honored to have worked closely with him to deliver the legislative reforms that have put Jamaica on a sound fiscal path for the future. And I say, hail the man. But as the most honourable Portia Simpson Miller often says, a responsible government must balance the books while balancing people's lives. The public debt is now below 100% of GDP. Below. And GDP is recovering from the effects of the pandemic. We believe that Jamaica can afford to slow the pace of debt reduction at this time and use those resources to help the people get through these most difficult times. On the other hand, the negative social impact of continued excessive fiscal conservatism when we're in a crisis will do lasting damage to the society. I would support additional expenditures of up to 2% of GDP to address the critical needs facing the society. That's about $40 billion. It is time to focus on helping our people. It is not the time for excessive fiscal conservatism. The government is playing with fire by leaving vulnerable populations unprotected in this vortex of high inflation and the unbearable cost of living. With real GDP growth of 3.5% projected for the coming fiscal year, this expenditure that I am proposing would not worsen the debt to GDP ratio. On the other hand, it would also begin the process of addressing some of the major social deficits that cause our low national productivity and our dire problem of violent crime. Madam Speaker, one thing I love about the Jamaican people is their ability to identify a puppy show. Many saw the unveiling of the new banknotes for what it really was last week, Tuesday, a distraction from the real issues that are biting the people. It was just another fantasy. How do new banknotes help our people who are trying to survive day to day, living from hand to mouth? How is it relevant at a time like this? Madam Speaker, it will do nothing to help the people ride out the storm. As one man told me, it won't put one more dumpling in the pot. Aside from all the silliness of the unveiling of the new banknotes last week, arrogant governance, the government chose not to consult with the opposition on the design of the new notes, even though the proposed design involves powerful symbolism affecting some of our great political leaders. Creating new banknotes is not just a family matter. It is much bigger than that. No consultation. You just brought it here last Tuesday with a whole bag of hype. That is not how to build a better understanding. That is not how you promote togetherness. That is not how we work together. That is disrespect. And yes, we know the Prime Minister wants his mentor, Mr. Siaga, on a banknote. No problem. No problem. If you say a $2,000...
Madam Speaker.
The Prime Minister is on his feet, please. The Prime Minister is on his feet.
Madam,
Come on, the Prime Minister is on his feet.
Madam Speaker, thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank the Leader of the Opposition for yielding.
Yes, sir.
I rise on a point of order. At no time was there ever a consideration regarding the well-known and close relationship that I have had with Mr. Siaga as an impetus or a reason or a cause for him to be added to our currency. Mr. Siaga is on the currency because he deserves to be there. I wish to assure the Jamaican people that we do not make these national decisions on political basis.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and I absolutely take your word for that. I'm saying if a new $2,000 note is needed, that is fine. Put Mr. Siaga on the $2,000 note. But leave Michael Manley on the $1,000 note. You changed it without consulting us. You changed it without any attempt to reach consensus. And that approach to governance will not last the test of time. The Minister of Finance told us that he was doing this out of love. Second, man. The Minister of Finance told us that he's doing this out of love. But love must be based on truth, respect, and understanding. The approach taken in this matter has none of that. We know the reality, and the people know the reality. The hype and gimmickry won't fool them. They know their history. The reality that must be faced is that there's further truth and reconciliation needed to heal our society when it comes to the Manley-Seattle period. In the 1970s, Michael Manley was trying to build a better Jamaica, a more equal, fair, and just Jamaica for all the people. He was especially concerned about the masses who are marginalized and oppressed by a colonial system which the JLP had left untouched after independence. In this period of the 1970s, the government gave the country free education. The PNP under Michael Manley gave Jamaica the National Housing Trust and built thousands of houses for low-income families. The Manley government gave women the right to equal pay and the right to maternity leave. He gave the workers the right to redundancy pay and notice pay. He gave the workers access to an industrial disputes tribunal when their rights were violated. He made everyone lawful, number standard day again, whether their parents were married or not, so they could get their inheritance and step up in a life as equal citizens of this country. Michael Manley was an international champion in the fight against the racist apartheid regime in South Africa and for a better deal for third world countries like Jamaica. He gave the masses of this country a place in this society so that everybody is smarty, no care where you're born and where you grow. Many professionals and business people are where they are today because Michael Manley pushed open so many doors in the 1970s. From our perspective, in that era, the other leader did his best with the help of outside forces like the CIA to destabilize Michael Manley's efforts. Jamaica paid a heavy price. Many of our people were killed in the resulting political violence. The economy was severely damaged by capital flight, hoarding, and the hostile propaganda of the conservative media. All of that was about turning back progress. Madam Speaker, Michael Manley never lost faith in the Jamaican people. And we on this side will always have faith in the Jamaican people. And we will always have their back. So, Minister Clark, I beg you, stop distorting and revising history. I'm sure your own family were beneficiaries of what Michael Manley did for Jamaica. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the fiscal policy paper of February 10th, 2022 states that the budget is based on a projected average oil price of US $67.50 per barrel. That's $67.50 US per barrel. Since that time, the war in Ukraine has pushed the oil price to well over $100 US a barrel. We know that a substantial part of the price of gas in Jamaica, somewhere over 40%, is made up of various taxes, of which the ad valorem SCT is a major component. The ad valorem...
The member's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, in keeping with the noble tradition of this House.
That's right.
And the practice over time, I beg to move that the member's time be extended sufficiently to allow him to finish his presentation. Please, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the Speaker's time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? No. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, my calm and noble colleagues on the other side. The fiscal policy paper of February 10th, 2022 says that the budget is projected, or based on a projected average oil price of $67.50 per barrel, $67.50 US per barrel. Since that time, the war in Ukraine has pushed the oil price up to well over $100 US a barrel. Around 40% of the price of gas in Jamaica is made up of various taxes, with the ad valorem SCT, that is the one that works out as a percentage of the price of the product, being a major component. Our spokesperson on finance has called for the hedge tax on fuel to be returned to motorists, the full amount of it, which was around $7 billion. The hedge tax was imposed to buy price insurance to protect the public from high gas prices. While this government continues to collect the hedge tax, it has not been used for that purpose since 2016. Instead, the government has been keeping the money and using it for other things. I support our spokesperson's call, and I want to go even further. We are proposing that for the duration of the inflation crisis, the government caps the ad valorem SCT on fuel at an oil price of $67.50 US per barrel, and also the equivalent for the price of LNG, so that prices of those crucial commodities that go above the budgeted price do not result in higher taxes on fuel. Consumers need a break on their electricity bills and will soon need a break on their water bills. Motorists need a break at the pumps with the price of gas at historic highs. Taxis and bus operators, they need a break too. Their costs have eroded the viability of their business, and they are now pressuring the government for a fare increase, which the commuting public can hardly afford. Higher transportation costs will affect other prices in the economy. That is the people's reality. It is not a fantasy. Capping the ad valorem SCT on fuel based on an oil price of $67.50 US per barrel will take some of the pressure off consumers, motorists, and transport operators. It would be a meaningful response to the devastating increases in electricity prices, water rates, and transport costs flowing from the spike in the price of oil. Madam Speaker, I know that Barbados yesterday did something similar to ease the pressure there, and we salute Prime Minister Mia Mottley for her vision and care for her people. While Barbados will have to raise new taxes to pay for it, Jamaica is in a different position. Since in Jamaica the government has not budgeted for a windfall in taxes on oil prices above $67.50 US, capping the tax at that price, the price underlying the budget, will not adversely affect the budget, but it will cushion the crisis for the people. Madam Speaker, with the explosion of the internet and access to online shopping, consumers can buy personal items from overseas and have them shipped to Jamaica. These are items that are not produced here. This has spawned a new industry of firms that bring these goods into Jamaica for online shoppers. But unless the items are less than $50 US in value, that's 7,500 Jamaican dollars, import taxes are charged on the full value of the purchase. The import taxes on goods valued at over $50 US are burdensome on consumers who shop in this way to achieve greater value. I'm calling on the government to increase the tax-free value on these imports of personal items from $50 US to $150 US. It will make a real difference. It will make a real difference to consumers who need to reduce the cost of living to them by using these new opportunities that modern technology and modern logistics have made possible. And for the Jamaicans overseas in our diaspora who send home barrels with food and other essentials to help their families to survive, I say, during this crisis, reduce the cost of clearing the barrels off. I propose that it be cut in half, 50% less for the coming year, from 6,500 to 3,250 Jamaican dollars. Give these families the break they need when they clear their barrels. It is a lifeline sent to them by their families abroad. Madam Speaker, online teaching will remain part of the education system, even though face-to-face classes have resumed. The government's pandemic program of free devices, while welcome, was too limited in scope. It did not adequately cover those in need. Many parents cannot afford the cost of tablets or laptops. Their children's education continues to suffer because online learning is still part of the system. This is reality, not fantasy, Madam Speaker. I think it is immoral and bad policy too for the government to be collecting taxes on devices needed by children to access education. Once again, we call on the government, remove all taxes from these devices, make them more affordable, and lessen the cost to parents. Madam Speaker, there's another reality which is deep and which all of us need to pay attention to. Jamaica has so much potential. Our people are naturally talented, naturally entrepreneurial, and powerfully resilient. We shine wherever we go around the world, in every field of endeavor. Yet here at home, so many of us are performing below our true potential. Our society was built on fundamental inequality, coming out of our history of slavery and colonialism. Sadly, even as we approach the 60th anniversary of our independence, Jamaica remains a very unequal society. Just recently, the Governor General pointed out that 1 in 6 of all Jamaicans go to bed hungry every night. That is approximately 500,000 Jamaicans. That is reality, not fantasy. In the education system, there is a wide gulf in performance between the traditional secondary schools and many non-traditional schools. That gulf leaves too many of our youth disillusioned with diminished prospects to become productive citizens. In healthcare, if you're sick and you don't have money or support from family or friends, dog nyam your supper. So-called free health care is another fantasy. If you get sick and you don't have money, forget it. No diagnostic tests, no surgical implants, and nothing but the most basic medication. And we thank the PNP for programs like the National Health Fund and JADEP that have at least eased the price on basic medical and medication. Madam Speaker, in the legal system, if your rights are trampled on and you don't have money in your pocket, there is no justice. There is no effective legal aid system for civil cases where you have to seek the aid of the court to protect your rights. Our economy has evolved as a system of enclaves. The best commercial, agricultural, and recreational spaces are owned and available to the privileged and the powerful. The majority do not have equal access to opportunity, for life is always a struggle for them. That is the reality. For the majority of Jamaicans, prosperity under the current system is but an illusion to be pursued but never attained. Indeed, with so much unfairness and frustration in our country, the use of prosperity as a political slogan has brought that word into disrepute. No wonder it seems to have been retired to the same place as you can sleep with your windows and doors open. Fantasy again. Madam Speaker, we can and we must do better. The society needs a national effort to change these conditions for hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans who live on the margins and who are barely surviving. To put our people on a path to real progress, we need a new national spirit in this land. We need to pull each other up. We need to power a new Jamaican dream where everyone has a stake and there is equality of opportunity and social justice for all. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican dream is to change our society fundamentally. It will create conditions where everyone can achieve a reasonable quality of life, where everyone, not just a few, can truly say, Jamaica nice. As Stanley and the Turbines once said, I'm dreaming of a new Jamaica, a land of peace and love. Imagine a Jamaica which is characterized by fairness and justice for all our people, where the system does not treat any Jamaican as more worthy of dignity or respect than any other. Imagine a Jamaica where the system makes every possible effort to ensure that each Jamaican has a fair chance to access the opportunities of a good life. That is a Jamaican dream. That Jamaican dream is not a fantasy. Together, we can power that dream. Together, we can build that new Jamaica, and there is power in the dream. The People's National Party, under my leadership, is committed to building a society that embraces the Jamaican dream. It is a dream rooted in equality, social justice, and the deepening of our country's democratic processes. We believe in creating the conditions to unleash the potential of every Jamaican who has ambition and who wants to achieve a good quality of life. Today, Madam Speaker, I will share some of our ideas to make the Jamaican dream a reality for all our people. The pandemic worsened the weaknesses in Jamaica's education system. 2 years of school lockdowns have created a devastating crisis of learning loss. It must be addressed with urgency. A recent World Bank study pressed for an increase in expenditure on education by at least $2.4 to $3.9 billion per year for the next 2 years to tackle this crisis of learning loss. It says Jamaica must finance urgent programs to restore the learning loss suffered by our children who didn't get any real access to education for the 2 years of the pandemic. If this is not done, they estimate, this is the World Bank, that the country over the long term will be cost $848 billion. MP Julian Robinson spoke about this last Thursday. I support what he said, and I wish to reinforce it. Instead of focusing on making 2 years of sixth form mandatory, the government must invest in addressing the serious deficits in early childhood development and primary school education. Those are the foundations of our education system. This budget does not provide the increased annual expenditure to address the crisis of learning loss. There is no comprehensive, well-funded program to tackle the crisis in the education system coming out of the pandemic. And I regard this as a fundamental dereliction of duty to the Jamaican people. The recent report of the Orlando-Patterson Commission is also very disturbing. It shows that a large proportion of Jamaican students are not achieving even the minimum learning standards. The report states that, and I quote, at the end of primary school, the majority of students remain illiterate and innumerate, and most leave the secondary school with no marketable skill, end of quote. In 2018, only 65% of grade 4 students acquired mastery in numeracy, and only 47% of students who sat maths CSEC were able to pass it. And of course, many students who are not considered even competent to sit that exam. Jamaican students are performing below their peers in other Caribbean countries. The report shows that in 2019, a third of grade 6 students could not read, 56% could not write, and 57% could not extract information from simple sentences. All of us in this Parliament must take stock of this and do something about it. We're facing another crisis here. Madam Speaker, global evidence has found that investments in early childhood education are among the most effective interventions in achieving national development. It is well established that the poorest segments of the population are more likely to benefit from public investment in education at the primary level. A recent World Bank study shows that government expenditure on early childhood education per student in Jamaica at 7% of GDP per capita is significantly lower than all other comparable countries. This poor allocation of resources has negative outcomes which flow from the education system and outside. For Jamaicans, education and training are the path out of poverty. Education and training increase productivity and competitiveness within our economy so that Jamaica can achieve sustainable growth and development. Our national productivity and competitiveness are being held back because we are not providing our children with the fundamentals of a good education. I can quote the World Bank. They say the low level of human capital can mainly be explained by the low quality of education. That is what they say. The next PNP administration will prioritize and make significant investments in early childhood development and primary school education, including teacher training. We must ensure that all Jamaican children achieve age-appropriate levels of literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking by the end of grade 6. Adequate provision must also be made for children with special needs. Former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller often told us, start them right and make them bright. There is no better way of utilizing resources than investing in our people, and our children in particular, so that they can achieve their full potential and fulfill the Jamaican dream. Education, Madam Speaker, and training, that is the engine that will power the Jamaican dream. Madam Speaker, tertiary education needs to be made more accessible, especially for young people from low-income families. The state, and not the student, should bear the risk of employment creation. Students should not have to fear borrowing to fund their education if they need to fund it that way. We must make changes to the Student Loan Bureau to make funding for tertiary education more attractive and more accessible. The next PNP administration will help our students to step up in our life and participate in the Jamaican dream. We will reconfigure the loan structure used by the Student Loan Bureau, capping monthly payments at a reasonable percentage, not more than 15% of the borrower's actual income. We must ensure that student loan payments are manageable for young graduates. The Minister of Finance announced last year that only one guarantor will be required by the Student Loan Bureau going forward. That was a step in the right direction, but it does not go far enough. Many students from low-income homes cannot find an acceptable guarantor, and this requirement effectively excludes them. When the Public Accounts Committee last looked at the Student Loan Bureau, we found that the amounts recovered from guarantors are in fact quite small in the scheme of things. This tells us that the retention of this requirement of a guarantor is not necessary for the sustainability of the institution as a lender. The PNP government, when next in office, will abolish altogether the requirement of finding a guarantor to access student loans. Madam Speaker, many students have been hit hard by this pandemic. I am proposing a Fresh Start program where the Student Loan Bureau forgives, say, $7.5 billion in students' accrued loan interest and penalties. This would cost the Student Loan Bureau nothing additional, as these amounts have already been provided for over the last 5 financial years in the Student Loan Bureau's annual income statements. A fresh start would remove any bad credit rating from these students. It would give them a chance to build a better future as they step forward in their adult lives. This is a pragmatic and humane approach. Many of our young people are anxious to get a university education, earn a degree, and improve their prospects. They borrowed student loans and agreed to the loan repayment structure, but it has just been beyond their capacity to pay, even with the best will in the world. And many have now just given up and accepted their lot. Madam Speaker, even for commercial lenders, and the Student Loan Bureau is not a commercial lender, but even for commercial lenders, it is usually better to work with a borrower and rehabilitate them rather than take a hard line which causes them to throw up their hands. Let us give these students a chance to build their careers, a fresh start, without the mental stress and financial pressure from their borrowing from the Student Loan Bureau. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has huge gaps in vocational training. It is said that 60% of our labor force does not have any form of certification, 60%. This means that the majority of our workforce is not qualified for anything other than poorly paid jobs in sectors that keep labor costs low in order to compete internationally. Clearly, the country's vocational training institutions have been underperforming and need substantial transformation and expansion. Under the next PNP government, there will be a well-funded national program to provide opportunities for vulnerable youth. We must give them a better chance to become productive citizens. The needs of our economy are rapidly changing. We're in the era now of robotics and artificial intelligence, with new buzzwords like Web3 and decentralized finance, non-fungible tokens and the metaverse. And technology will continue to disrupt and supersede existing industries. Billions of dollars of capital around the world are being poured into the development of commercial opportunities leveraging these emerging technologies. We must overhaul our training institutions like HART, NTA to meet these challenges. These institutions have really gone off the rails and need to become more accountable for their performance. Jamaica must have a training capacity that delivers a modern and productive workforce, capable of driving national competitiveness and attracting high levels of investment in value-added goods and services. The truth is, Madam Speaker, the society and the system in Jamaica have failed hundreds of thousands of vulnerable youths. We cannot continue to ignore them and expect the security forces to suppress the resulting chaos and violence. As Jimmy Cliff sang, we must treat the youths right or you'll be playing with dynamite. Too many of our youth leave school and end up on the corner with nothing constructive to do. Too many soon yield to the temptation of seeking a way out through badness and the gun. That is the dynamite of which Jimmy Cliff sang. I've said it before and I say it again. We need to fill the gaps left by teenage pregnancy, inadequate parenting skills, the culture of violence, poor anger management, and the reality of persistent poverty. There is no way to build a Jamaican dream unless we tackle these issues with a bold and comprehensive national policy. We must provide opportunities for vulnerable youth to get another chance to become productive citizens. We must provide them with access to training, to mentorship, to remedial education and job placements. We must reinforce their life skills, build their self-esteem, give them a sense of citizenship and belonging in this society. The efforts that we have made over the years just have not gone far enough. Jamaica must engage and reset the lives of so-called unattached youths. Lead them away away from gangs and guns and put them on a path to productivity and success. We cannot move forward as a country unless we give these youths a chance. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican dream embraces freedom and democracy. The Jamaican dream does not tolerate exclusion of the vulnerable. It does not tolerate arrogance by those in authority. And most of all, it does not tolerate the abuse of state power. The Jamaican dream does not tolerate school children being excluded from school because they wear locks as part of their religious beliefs. As Minister of Justice, I developed and pushed through legislation in 2015 to decriminalize ganja and create a lawful ganja industry. My goal then was to liberate and empower the people, not to exclude them from economic opportunities that the industry is creating. The Jamaican dream will not tolerate a lawful ganja industry which keeps out the small farmers who built the Jamaican brand of herb. These are the same small farmers who suffered from a century of oppressive anti-ganja laws. The Jamaican dream requires them to be facilitated in every possible way by active state intervention. They must become part of a lucrative, innovative, and dynamic industry for medicinal and therapeutic cannabis. Madam Speaker, any regulatory obstacles standing in the way of this will be swiftly swept aside by the next PNP administration. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican dream will not permit a Prime Minister to make orders creating criminal offences like the amended DRMA did without parliamentary oversight. It will never tolerate Parliament giving such extraordinary powers to one man or woman on the false basis that the offences would only attract tickets with modest fines. In fact, 1 year later, there is still no ticketing system. Without the promised ticketing system, we saw ordinary Jamaicans being locked up because they could not pay heavy fines, sometimes even $200,000 for being on the road during a curfew or not wearing a mask in public. Meanwhile, champagne birthday parties for political activists on no movement days carried no political consequences. These double standards are unjust and they anger the Jamaican people. The Jamaican dream requires one rule for everyone, no matter where you come from or no matter who you know or don't know. The Jamaican dream does not force a youth in custody to apologize in handcuffs on camera to a Prime Minister for daring to speak out in strident terms against restrictions on his freedom during the pandemic. That kind of abuse is not a feature of a democratic society. It is not a feature of Jamaica, land we love. That is akin to dictatorship. We burn a fire on those kind of oppressive policies. There is no place for autocratic rule in the Jamaican dream. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican dream will not permit the government to use states of emergency as a continuous tool of policing. A state of emergency is the last resort under the Constitution. Its purpose is to protect the country from an existential threat to our constitutional order and our democratic way of life. A state of emergency allows regulations which remove basic rights, in particular, the right of access to the court if you are locked up by the security forces and detained. The removal of those rights allows the security forces to arrest and detain anyone they choose. It casts a broad net into which the innocent and those lacking connections and influence can find themselves incarcerated for extended periods. They have no access to a court for the protection of their rights. Many innocent young men have had their lives interrupted and blighted after they were swept up in a state of emergency, and that is unjust. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's terrible and chronic problem of violent crime requires an effective and proportionate response. It cannot be achieved through oppressive laws that trample on the rights of the people. As we have said before, we believe that only a balanced approach using both crime control as well as crime prevention measures can achieve a sustainable long-term reduction in violent crime. A balanced approach is essential to social harmony and sustained crime reduction. From the enforcement perspective, what is required is spear phishing that targets dangerous criminals, the violence producers, not casting a wide net that entangles both the good and the bad. The government must fashion legislation that allows known violence producers to be taken off the streets so that an effective case of prosecution is brought against them. That procedure should have proper checks and balances to ensure that reliable intelligence, not mere sus or gossip, is the basis for detention. Madam Speaker, if that basic standard of justice is met, I will support legislation that enables us to target and effectively deal with the vicious purveyors of criminal violence who are taking so many lives and destroying so many families in this country. They are sapping the national will and our collective hope for the future. They are killing the Jamaican dream. Madam Speaker, we also believe that community intervention and targeted resources are essential to achieve sustained violence reduction. We have seen too often how reprisals kill and maim the innocent, including precious children. The Peace Management Initiative, which had been successful in the past, has been allowed to wither on the vine. In our view, it should be revamped, it should be revitalized and made to work in hotspots across the country. We will equip teams of violence interrupters to intervene in conflicts on the ground. That is the way to avert escalation of an incident into a spiral of reprisals. We will train and empower 500 violence producers across Jamaica to help maintain calm and good order in these communities. We did it before and we will do it again. In our last term of office, programs like Unite for Change and indeed the Peace Management Initiative helped to bring the murder rate down. We took it down to over 20% lower than it has been during the past 6 years of this government. It is curious, Madam Speaker, that since 25th January this year, when I called out the minister and put the commissioner on probation, we have seen the lowest rates of murder in 6 years. What has changed? What has changed? What has changed is that the existing tools of law enforcement, including zones of special operations in areas under siege from violent criminals, are being made to work, as we always said they could. Indeed, since I made that call, the approach has been far more effective than the repeated states of emergency from 2017 through 2021. And I sincerely hope, Madam Speaker, that this trend is sustained. It is a matter of record. Madam Speaker, the minimum wage, I move to the minimum wage. The minimum wage does not reflect the actual cost of living. Low-wage earners, especially families with children, have borne the brunt of the economic fallout in Jamaica over the last 2 years. They are barely surviving. Too many children go to bed hungry every night. That must be addressed with policies that put the people at the center of national development and uplift those who need help. That is what we must do to build the Jamaican dream. The pressure on families will not be sufficiently addressed by the latest $2,000 increase in the minimum wage. from $7,000 to $9,000. Accumulated inflation from 2018, which was the year of the last increase before this one, is approximately 23%. As was shown last Thursday by our Shadow Minister of Finance, basic food items and fuel have seen increases that far exceed the overall inflation rate of that period. There are massive increases in the price of chicken, rice, flour, bread, cooking oil, corned beef, and don't even mention saltfish, because that is now a luxury item. $2,000 after 4 years does not adequately respond to the dire situation faced by minimum wage earners. It provides no buffer for the continuing high inflation that is raging. The next PNP government will establish a livable wage. A livable wage. With annual adjustments for inflation so that people are able to feed and look after their families. That is what the Jamaican dream demands. Madam Speaker, the arguments against a livable wage surround fears that some employers may reduce the workers because they can't afford to pay it. And it is sometimes also said that the government will not be able to afford the cost of outsourcing arrangements to accommodate higher wages. But you see, this ignores the great benefits to the society from requiring a livable wage across the board. It will improve the standard of living at the base of the society. It will reduce child poverty. It will reduce inequality. It will build social cohesion. And it will stimulate aggregate demand and promote inclusive economic growth. We've said it, I have said it before and I say it again. $12,000 should be the basic minimum wage implemented now, not $9,000. And it should be reviewed annually to account for inflation, especially at a time like this when inflation is so high. The next PNP government will implement annual increases to the minimum wage to keep pace with the cost of living until the process to determine and implement a livable wage is completed. We will protect the workers of this country. Madam Speaker, I move to the question of the public sector. The transformation of the public sector to make it more efficient began with the PNP. The process has been very slow. We are pleased to see that the restructuring in the compensation arrangements are to begin this year. However, we advise the government, and indeed demand, that there be full and transparent consultations with the unions which represent the public sector workers. The proposed restructuring arrangements must be fair and equitable for all employees who make up the public sector. Let us not try to fix one problem and end up creating another. The People's National Party has a proud track record of defending workers and enacting important pro-worker legislation. As I have said, it was the PNP that established the Industrial Disputes Tribunal to provide greater access to employment justice for workers. It was the PNP that ensured that workers who are unjustifiably terminated or are made redundant have clear rights to fair compensation under the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payments Act. It was the PNP that ensured that women and men earn the same pay for similar work under the Employment Equal Pay for Men and Women Act. It was the PNP which ensured that pregnant women get time off work to have their babies without losing pay and benefits under the Maternity Leave Act. And the PNP gave workers the right to negotiate more flexible work arrangements with employers without losing benefits when we passed the Employment Flexible Work Arrangements Miscellaneous Provisions Act. We believe that it is in Jamaica's long-term interest to promote a more equitable and mutually beneficial relationship between capital and labour. A balanced and cohesive society and an inclusive economy, which are the key elements of a Jamaican dream, demand that workers must be protected and their rights respected. The next PNP government will pursue a series of reforms to ensure greater fairness at work, improve industrial harmony in the country, and increase productivity and competitiveness in our economy. The widespread use of fixed-term contracts must be addressed. Too often, they are being used to sidestep the basic guaranteed package of rights and benefits for workers. This is not fair to employees. It deprives the social protection system, NIS, NHT, and HART of significant funding as well, and it will end up costing the state heavily in the long run. The next PNP government will bring legislation to eliminate abusive contractual arrangements which prejudice basic employment rights. We will ensure fair and equitable treatment for workers, regardless of the legal forms that their contracts are contrived in. The sugar industry has gone through a severe and painful decline since the preferential trade arrangements ended. In communities across Jamaica where sugar was once the major employer, living standards have fallen dramatically. It has been replaced by a crippling rise in violent crimes and gangs in those areas. Sadly, formerly peaceful rural areas have become hotspots for violence, where the now defunct sugar industry was once the major employer. Arrangements for the social and economic transformation of these communities have been inadequate and ad hoc. A disgraceful example has been the forced removal of long-term residents of Innswood sugar lands. The government enabled them to be removed from the only home that they have known to facilitate a sale of the land to private developers. They were treated like second-class citizens. I visited them myself, without any proper relocation arrangements. That matter is ongoing and remains unresolved. There must be a reckoning for this kind of abuse of the poor and marginalized. That is not the Jamaican dream. The next PNP government will establish a commission to examine the situation faced by communities in former sugar areas. It will develop a comprehensive socio-economic plan to revitalize those areas. The objective will be to provide employment and entrepreneurial opportunities for the displaced sugar workers, cane farmers, and their families. They must once again be able to earn an honest living and live in dignity. Madam Speaker, we would like to see joint industrial councils established in those industries where there are high levels of employment but no common standard for working conditions and no union representation. The security guard industry, the tourism industry, and the global services industry, or BPO as it's sometimes called, are cases in point. While some employers in these industries have introduced enlightened employment practices, others lag behind when it comes to pension benefits, medical benefits, vacation leave, maternity leave, and so on. Joint industrial councils provide a mechanism for addressing these issues in a cohesive way for the long-term benefit of the industry and the overall economy, and will be a win-win for these businesses and the workers. Madam Speaker, in 1993, the then government passed legislation to provide tax incentives for the establishment of employee share ownership plans, or ESOPs as they are called. A special ESOP unit was established within the tax department at that time to facilitate applications from companies that wish to set up employee share ownership plans. Several companies made use of the legislation, and it created substantial wealth for their employees at all levels, from janitors and clerical workers up to the CEO. I wish to honor the late Dr. Paul Robertson, under whose ministerial leadership the government printing office was divested to a company 100% owned by the workers, the Jamaica Printing Services Limited. That company is still operating nearly 30 years later, providing printing services for the state. Indeed, it still prints the laws that come to this Parliament. Unfortunately, the momentum of the ESOP program was not maintained. We are committed to reviewing and simplifying that legislation. We will once again promote employee share ownership as part of a deliberate strategy to broaden ownership in the country. It will enhance the Jamaican dream to have our workers sharing in the ownership of the businesses for which they work. I have first-hand knowledge of the benefits of this enlightened policy. DB&G, a successful company of which I was one of the founders, established an employee share ownership plan for our staff. As the business grew and prospered, many of them became millionaires from their shares. That is an example of the Jamaican dream in action. So, Madam Speaker, Jamaica nice, but not for everybody, unfortunately. Low-income communities in our country suffer from poor infrastructure and lack the basic amenities for decent and modern living. These adverse living conditions contribute to negative social behaviors and reinforce intergenerational poverty. In building the Jamaican dream, these communities can no longer have second-class status when it comes to basic amenities like street lighting, garbage disposal, and water and sewage infrastructure. We all know that adverse living conditions and social neglect are part of why youth turn to badness and the gun. Investing in these communities will support our strategy to reduce violent crime in this country. Much of the housing stock in low-income communities are not fit for decent and comfortable living. For many, it's not nice at all. Many who live in these substandard conditions are single mothers or elderly. I take a couple examples. 16-year-old Laquania Brown, who lives in a yard which houses many families. It only has one bathroom in the yard, and that bathroom is barely functioning. When she bathes, she doesn't feel safe from those who might want to trouble her. She hates the conditions in which she lives, but she has no choice. Auntie One, and I talk about 81-year-old Auntie Pauline. Auntie Pauline is 81 years old. Her old roof leaks so badly, she had to move into a room with just some zinc and no protection from the rain and the cold. That's not right. We must fix this. Our people deserve better. We have to give our people a sense of dignity, achievement and progress, so they can feel part of building the Jamaican dream. The next PNP government will work with the people within these communities to transform them by investing in their basic infrastructure and amenities. We will implement a program, we may call it Operation Shelter, for people who are living in deplorable housing conditions. We will empower these citizens to renovate and upgrade the dilapidated housing stock, both in inner city and rural communities. We will provide resources to help them fix their leaking roofs, restore their crumbling walls and their rotten floors. If they don't have a bathroom, we will help them to build one. We will do this by assisting them to purchase the materials while they make their own arrangements with the tradesmen and labour from within their communities. This will stimulate the local economy in these communities. Local tradesmen, labourers and hardware merchants will benefit from the investment that the residents make in upgrading their homes. We will revamp and expand the urban renewal legislation to attract investors, to establish businesses in these communities, right where so many of their customers live. We will also find a way to build more affordable new housing. Jamaica's boom in real estate development has left out those who cannot afford anything other than to start small. government must be the architect of creative policies that incentivize developers to provide low-income housing for this chronically underserved segment of the market. Some recent efforts by the NHT, the National Housing Trust, have been mentioned, but so much more needs to be done. We will incentivize developers to invest in building affordable housing for low-income earners. It will take a strategic approach by government in collaboration with the private sector and the National Housing Trust. And we will also restore the NHT to the purpose for which Michael Manley gave it to the people of Jamaica. The next PNP government will implement changes to ensure that the National Housing Trust refocuses on its core mandate of delivering housing solutions to those Jamaicans who cannot otherwise buy or build. That is the purpose why Prime Minister Michael Manley established that great institution in 1975. Madam Speaker, the pandemic has shown that our economy must be made more resilient to external shocks. Disrupted global supply chains and geopolitical upheavals have made key agricultural inputs unaffordable. Food security must be high on the agenda, and this entails a robust agricultural policy. We must improve farm roads, irrigation and storage systems. We must encourage greater flows of capital into agro-processing. We must assist exporters to penetrate new markets for agricultural produce and protect our valuable national brands. We must incentivize productive relationships between well-capitalized mother facilities and small farmers. This will improve their production techniques, transfer technology to them, and support their development. I endorse what MP Julian Robinson said last Thursday about tackling predial larceny. Organized crime is involved in stealing livestock from local farmers and taking it to Haiti to purchase guns, which are then brought back here to create mayhem. The penalties for predial larceny must be steep. It must be brought under the Proceeds of Crime Act so that the criminals' profits from robbing our farmers are taken from them and used to compensate those farmers. Madam Speaker, Jamaica must become the agricultural powerhouse of the Caribbean. I know that CARICOM is promoting an increase in regional trade with an emphasis on food security. That is timely and welcome. Jamaica can and should lead the way in achieving this as part of building the Jamaican dream. Madam Speaker, a month or so ago, there was some talk about issuing permits for imported chicken parts as a response to the rising price of locally grown chicken. This has been caused by the spike in the price of chicken has been caused by the increase in the cost of inputs, especially feed. It is not due to a shortage of supply, of chicken supply. There's no shortage there. Imported chicken receives massive subsidies from foreign governments. Importation, when there is no shortage of local supply, unleashes unfair competition against the local industry. This industry includes many, many thousands of backyard farmers who depend on it for their livelihoods. Madam Speaker, undermining local producers cannot be good policy. Rather than giving up revenue by allowing imports, which will unfairly compete with thousands of small farmers, we say give our farmers a break on their input prices to make locally grown produce more affordable to consumers. Cushion the crisis, we say. The announced incentive of $50 million for fertilizer is good, but it really won't move the needle. I'm calling on the government to provide our farmers with meaningful subsidies that will reduce the cost of fertilizer, seeds, and feed for the duration of the current spike in food price inflation. This process can be managed by the Ministry of Agriculture and the Consumer Affairs Commission with the aid of a watchful public to ensure that the benefit of these subsidies is passed through to consumers. Madam Speaker, building a strong economy is essential to the Jamaican dream. It requires that our bureaucracy must support and assist entrepreneurs who are willing to undertake business risk rather than frustrating them. And I support the additional funding that has been identified for venture capital and also SMEs. I hope that they will be able to access that. The public sector is required to operate by adhering to rules and procedures that are embedded in laws. Many of these laws and procedures are outdated and no longer fit for purpose. They need to be analyzed, modified, or removed so that the bureaucracy helps the economy to move forward rather than being a drag on productivity and competitiveness. This is not a new concept, Madam Speaker. We have been saying it for years, but it requires determination and sustained attention. It is only possible to achieve it by granular attention to detail. When I was Minister of Justice, significant progress was made in this area. Working with the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce of the time, the MP for Western St. Andrew, we created the super form. It lets anyone starting a business get all their required government registrations at the same time in a single application. We also introduced the Asikuda system to digitize customs and customs services at our ports. However, the effort to improve the bureaucracy has stagnated and is no longer being treated as a priority. Too many areas where the public interfaces with the bureaucracy remain slow, frustrating, and inefficient. I am committed to making sustained efforts to change this. Madam Speaker, to encourage the formalization of business, we must also transform the bureaucracy to make the experience of moving from informal into formal quick, easy, and affordable, not frustrating or intimidating. Madam Speaker, in the era of climate change, depleting water resources, and food insecurity, charting the course for sustainable recovery must involve a new level of commitment to environmental protection and climate resilience. Jamaica has critical, ecologically sensitive national assets, like the cockpit country, other aquifers, our coastal areas and our river systems. We must protect them for future generations. We cannot continue to subordinate our long-term survival for ill-advised short-term gains. We cannot push through investments which are incompatible with environmental sustainability. That will only hurt us and our children and our children's children. NEPA is now embedded in the ministry that is tasked with promoting faster levels of economic growth. That is a clear conflict of interest, in my opinion. NEPA must become an independent regulatory body. Its enabling legislation must be updated to provide effective punishment for environmental violations. Right now, large ones effectively operate with impunity. Madam Speaker, we live in an era where technology increasingly dominates economic activity. Many of the world's largest businesses today did not even exist 15, 20 years ago. It's a remarkable thing. As the world goes increasingly digital, Jamaica is being left behind, with low levels of digital penetration. Technology provides new opportunities to drive efficiency. The Internet has become an indispensable source of knowledge and commercial facilitation. We need to invest in our rapid digital transformation. You know, in the 1970s, the PNP government of the day took on electrification. That was a time when many communities in the country had no access to electricity, and the decision was taken to tackle that through a massive program that brought that essential utility, electricity, to nearly the entire country of Jamaica. We will do the same for broadband internet. We are told by the government that the process has started, but it seems to be moving very slowly, and one is yet to really feel its impact. Madam Speaker, 3 hotspots per constituency, each with a range of about 800 feet, while welcome, cannot adequately serve the needs of the people for internet access. We're happy for it, but it's not moving the needle. The next PNP government will make the required investments to bring broadband throughout communities across Jamaica at an affordable cost to the people. This will help to power the Jamaican dream for this generation and generations to come. Madam Speaker, I want to say something about the foreign exchange market. The foreign exchange market is critical to the Jamaican economy. The value of the US dollar impacts prices of just about everything in our import-dependent economy. The value of the US dollar also drives inflation expectations among the business community, and that flows through to the Bank of Jamaica and its Monetary Policy Committee's response to inflation and the setting of interest rates. The foreign exchange market is made up of authorized dealers and cambiers, licensed cambiers. They have been given the privilege by the state to operate as the exclusive intermediaries in the buying and selling of foreign exchange. It is a very lucrative business for them. But, Madam Speaker, it has become too easy to make super profits in a revolving cycle of buying and holding US dollars in a depreciating market, and then selling off the position as the financial quarter end approaches, and repeating the process when the Jamaican dollar temporarily revalues from the flurry of selling to realize those profits. That gravy train is not the purpose for which these intermediaries were given the exclusive privilege of trading foreign exchange. The time has come to impose market conduct rules on the foreign exchange market, as was done for stocks and bonds back in 1993 by the then PNP administration when we passed the Securities Act. When that was done, that was before the current foreign exchange market had fully emerged. It is a gap that must be filled now. Authorized dealers in foreign exchange should not be allowed to favor themselves over their clients in the market. There is a need also for greater transparency, ensuring that bids and offers are filled in an orderly and principled way, as applies to trades over the Jamaica Stock Exchange. Before the pandemic, we were told that this was coming. The Bank of Jamaica needs to expedite it. Madam Speaker, the entertainment sector has been dealt a long and painful body blow by the pandemic. We support its reopening now, with appropriate public education to encourage responsible behaviours and reduce the risk of viral transmission. Last Thursday, MP Julian Robinson presented an insightful and constructive analysis of Jamaica's incredible talents and the strengths in the cultural and creative industries, and he highlighted certain deficiencies in the state's approach to maximizing these opportunities. Several attempts have been made over the years, but the rigid bureaucracy that characterizes the Jamaican state has not, thus far, synchronized effectively with the more informal and dynamic nature of the cultural and creative industry. Indeed, Jamaica's worldwide recognition as a source of influential and loved forms of popular music, from menta to rocksteady, to ska to rocksteady, to reggae to dancehall, all of that has emerged in spite of, rather than because of, the role of the state. The PNP is committed to finding solutions that will enable these industries to provide new opportunities for Jamaicans, especially our youth, to create good livelihoods out of their natural creative talents. A clear and comprehensive developmental policy to support growth in this sector is needed. The full range of cultural and creative practitioners must be fully engaged in the development and the rollout of this national policy, and the various agencies of the state that play roles which impact on these industries, some of which Minister Robinson highlighted in the disparate parts of the public sector. They need to be coordinated to support the policy. Critical areas such as access to finance, education, training, and international marketing support must be addressed. Innovative solutions must be found. Madam Speaker, the state must play a catalytic role, filling the gaps for our creative talent and encouraging institutional investors, the private sector, to invest in these opportunities. It is a potential game changer for Jamaica if we can get the right policy mix and support. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's sense of nationhood must be deepened by constitutional reforms that encourage a more accountable and constructive political culture and practice in our democracy. These reforms are needed to rekindle public confidence in the political system and fire up the imagination of the Jamaican people as to what our nation can achieve with a good and honest government. There is a critical matter of expressing our identity and building our sense of nationhood by becoming a republic with a Jamaican president as our head of state. There is no good reason why this cannot be achieved in our 60th year of independence. The basic parameters have already been agreed and documented from our predecessors, were the leaders of their respective parties. We now need the political will to drive it forward, pass the laws that are required to do it, and seek the approval of the people in a referendum, as Barbados did so successfully last year. We must also create greater access to justice by acceding to the appellate jurisdiction of the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ. Whatever doubts may have existed when that court first emerged nearly 20 years ago, the reality now is that it has developed a strong track record of jurisprudence, becoming the first court in the region to be accepted into the International Consortium for Court Excellence. The Privy Council in London is fundamentally inaccessible. Clients and counsel need visas to go to that court. And you have no right to a visa. It's at the discretion of the UK government. And the expense of pursuing appeals over there is way out of reach to most Jamaicans. That is why we hardly have any appeals to our final court now. 2 a year for the last few years. Madam Speaker, Jamaica has already paid in full for the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice. We put the money into an endowment trust fund to support its operations. Years ago, that was done. It is time to give our people access to the high-quality justice that it is offering. If both sides support it, it can be done by legislation, as the constitutional procedure does not include a referendum for this. I am ready and willing to work with the Prime Minister to deliver rapid progress on both these long outstanding fundamental reforms. Madam Speaker, another low-hanging fruit is the convention initiated by Prime Minister Bruce Golding, continued by Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller, of having the opposition appoint the chairman of the various committees within the House of Representatives. That convention helped us ensure greater accountability, transparency, and oversight of the executive branch of government through the committee system of the legislature, Parliament. When Prime Minister Holness cast aside that convention after the 2020 general elections, it was a retrograde step for our democracy. And it was rightly criticized, not only by the opposition, but by elements within civil society as well. The supposed justification for that backward step was to improve the performance of those parliamentary committees. Well, that has proven to be an illusion. Many of the committees have hardly met, and unsurprisingly, the use of chairmen who are government MPs has not furthered the objective of providing oversight of their own government. I am once again calling for the restoration of the convention of having the opposition appoint the chairman of the various committees in the House of Representatives. It avoids the clear conflict of interest of having the government chair the committees that are intended to provide accountability and transparency within the government itself. I also tabled Madam Speaker, I ask that they give me an opportunity to continue. Thank you, ma'am. Madam Speaker, I tabled nearly a year ago an impeachment bill. Its purpose is to bring greater accountability for parliamentarians who seriously violate the fundamental behavioral standards of their office. That initiative didn't originate with me. It originated in the consensus of constitutional reform that was achieved during the era of former leaders Patterson and Seaga. An earlier version of the impeachment bill was tabled by former Prime Minister Bruce Golding in 2011, but it did not move forward, despite manifesto commitments to do so. I'm calling on the Prime Minister to send my impeachment bill to a joint select committee where it will benefit from wide stakeholder engagement and review. Yes. We must then pass it into law so that the public no longer has to endure witnessing the presence of those whose conduct has brought the Parliament into shame and disrepute. I also believe that our existing constitutional arrangements have embedded an adversarial political culture in the country. This does not support the process of nation building or achieving our key developmental imperatives. I am therefore in favour of constitutional reforms which will force our political class to develop and accept the skills of consensus building. Embedding the need for consensus in many of our constitutional processes will help to build a more tolerant and loving society in Jamaica. For example, the Senate should be expanded to include some independent members who are jointly appointed by the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. They must include representatives from key stakeholders in our society, such as the churches and our diaspora, on who we rely so much. Other key office holders of sensitive posts, including the President, the new President as head of state when we get there, the 3 critical service commissions, the membership of those, the Chief Justice and the President of the Court of Appeal, the Auditor General, the DPP, those appointments should be approved by 2/3 of each House of Parliament. This will avoid any semblance or fear of political partisanship affecting these sensitive posts. After all, Madam Speaker, our national motto is out of many, one people. And our constitutional arrangements should reflect this aspiration and encourage consensus in the higher aspects of our actual political discourse and practice. If we embed the process of achieving consensus in more of our constitutional arrangements, it will help to build a more cohesive political culture, rather than the damage and backwardness of tribalism. That tribalism has resulted in the political class being regarded as part of the problem rather than the solution to our national development challenges. The Jamaican dream requires that we change this. Madam Speaker, the government wishes to split off Portmore as a separate parish from St. Catherine. But will this benefit the people of Portmore? Portmore now enjoys the benefit of being Jamaica's only city municipality, which gives its people the legal right to directly elect their mayor. It is a unique right in Jamaica, which does not apply to parishes. Why is the government so determined to deprive them of this right? Furthermore, Portmore does not have many of the facilities and amenities that parishes have. It has no parish court, no hospital, no market, no cemetery. Yet the government is rushing to make Portmore a parish without these facilities. Why? Why is the government doing this? The answer, Madam Speaker, is clear and simple. It would suit their short-term political ends. That's why. Our position is that the people of Portmore must be consulted fulsomely on the impacts of any such move, and the decision should then be theirs to take via a referendum. That is our position. Madam Speaker, the brilliant actress Lupita Nyong'o said, "No matter where you're from, your dreams are valid." The Jamaican dream is for all of us, from Trenchtown to Norbrook, from Granville to Montego Bay Freeport, from Moko to Cherry Gardens. We are the land of Marcus Garvey, Miss Lou, Bob Marley. We are the land of Herb McKinley, Donald Quarry, Usain Bolt, Shelley and Fraser Price, Elaine Thompson. We are the land of many other great icons who we can always draw on for inspiration and courage. The Jamaican dream is of a society in which it does not matter where in this country you were born and raised. It does not matter where you go to school. It does not matter how you look or how you talk. It does not matter if you have money or powerful connections. Where all that really matters are your values, your attitudes, and your willingness to work to achieve success in life. That is the Jamaican dream. That is the Jamaican dream. The Jamaican dream is not a fantasy. It is a positive and progressive vision of a brighter future for all Jamaicans. So I say, let us come together with purpose and build a nation. Together, let us make the Jamaican dream of equality of opportunity, justice and progress for all a reality. Let us truly live the powerful words of our motto, out of many, one people. It will take leadership with integrity. Leadership that the people can trust. Leadership that cares for the people and puts their interests first. That is the only leadership that can build the Jamaican dream. It is a dream of hope. It is a dream of justice. A dream of one Jamaica. There is power in the dream. May God bless you all and bless Jamaica, land we love.
Madam Speaker, we thank the Leader of the Opposition and our Member of Parliament for St. Andrews South for his fulsome presentation that lasted a good time. Not very long and not very short either, but a good 2 hours. Thank you very much, Leader of the Opposition, Mark Golding. Madam Speaker, it is not intended for us to do any further business today, but to suspend the debate of the appropriations bill until Thursday, March 17, when the Speaker will be the Prime Minister. The Most Honourable Andrew Holness. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question before the House is that the debate be suspended until Thursday the 17th, when the Prime Minister makes his contribution to the debate.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the adjournment of this Honourable House until Thursday, March 17 at 2 p.m. at the George William Gordon House.
The question is that the Parliament be adjourned until Thursday the 17th of March. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House is now adjourned.
Watch the Budget Debates 2022 on PBCJ. Find out how